Welcome to the first Q&A of tonight. It's part of the Archidikea Festival of Romani Film, which takes place from 19th November to 23rd November. And it's the fourth edition, but for the very first time just online. My name is Dag Lode. I'm part of the organizational team of the festival, and I'm speaking here from the Berlin Kreuzberg Club SO36. I want to welcome Shaun Williams, who's the director of the film Zakarpattia, a documentary that follows wedding musicians and their everyday life somehow, and their reflections on their Ruthenian-Romani identities. It takes place in Transcarpathia. It's a western part of the Ukraine. If you have any questions for Shaun, don't hesitate to use the chat on Facebook or YouTube. I will pass them on to Shaun. Hi, Shaun. Where are you now? You are in Romania, aren't you?
Yes, yes, I'm in a small village in Transylvania.
Shaun, you are a filmmaker and ethnomusicologist, and you are from Cincinnati, Ohio, actually.
That's right.
And that's how my first question is. This is somehow a long way to Transcarpathia, I would say. How did you get in contact with this region? What sparked your interest?
Well, without making it too long of a story, in 2007, I was working no, until 2008, for several years, I was working as a videographer and documentary filmmaker. I had just finished art school in Michigan and was working on making films and also making music in my free time. And I was really interested in Eastern European music, which is sort of how I defined it at the time, Eastern European music. I was not aware of all the regional differences and ethnic groups and so on. And I was at kind of a point in my life where I thought, if I'm going to go abroad, this is a good time to do it. I'm relatively unattached. And so I became a volunteer in the US Peace Corps, and they sent me to Ukraine, which was exactly what I had hoped for, to go to Eastern Europe. And I taught English in a small village in Transcarpathia. So that was my introduction to the region. And I don't know if I answered your question completely, but the rest is the rest is history. I became good friends with the musicians that you meet in the film. Um, and after my 4 years of volunteer work, I was convinced that I wanted to study ethnomusicology. I wanted to do some kind of project with these musicians, about this region and its very diverse culture and um, musical heritage. And so yeah, the film that you've just seen was part of it was used as my master's thesis in ethnomusicology, and in general, the project kind of sprang out of my feeling that these friends of mine, these musicians, deserved some more attention from outside their little corner of the world, um, and I wanted to document something that seems to be slowly disappearing and changing. Yeah, changing. Put it that way.
Wow, great. It's very interesting to know that that you met them first and then you decided to uh, develop a project with them. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about the production process itself. When did you start to work on the film?
Well, yeah, the film. Um, the production process was not ideal. I would say not professional, in that I had no budget. I had whatever small grant funding I got from my university for research, and I used that to do basically all. I tried to film all the interviews that I did for my ethnographic research, with the idea that I could um, have a film to go along with the thesis. But it took a long time. I had no team, so I did all the filming myself. I was asking the questions and I was behind the camera, which presents difficulties. I was the sound person, which, other problems resulting from that. A lot of batteries to remember to change, and, a lot of little mistakes along the way because I didn't have a team to support me. But I think the positive side of working alone in this no budget way it was that I had a very intimate space with the to with which in which to work with these musicians. They were already, most of them knew me already quite well, so I feel that it was nice that it was just me and my friend talking, and I didn't have a crew around me with lights and holding microphones over them, and all these things that kind of change this space and tend to make people uncomfortable, tend to change the way that people respond to interview questions. So I think that was the only really positive thing, positive side of working alone and working with limited resources like that, was that I think the material came out very very sincere and um, yeah, intimate in a way.
Yeah, exactly. That is noticeable because the interviews take place mostly in very, private rooms, and this as well creates an intimacy somehow and makes us as spectators, or brings us near as spectators to the persons. What would you say within the vote process? What did surprise you the most?
Within the
The vote,
filmmaking process,
yeah,
the whole,
within
yeah.
the vote process.
I think what surprised me most, it's one of the things that I ended up highlighting in the film, um, is this what seems to be a kind of paradox of self-identification, that you have that is quite common for people in this multi-ethnic region to identify, for example, as Roma, um, in one context, and then also in this, even in the same sentence, to say, "But I'm not really Roma because I don't speak the language." And so, what you see is that, you know, identity for these people, and I'd say for us as well, but we don't think about it that way often. It is tied to various contexts in which we live, um, and I think there are cultural factors at play in terms of why people in Transcarpathia tend to associate their identity foremost with language rather than with heritage. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, I think it present. I didn't want to present any answers to these questions, but just to kind of put them out there, because this is the reality, that it's not a there's no clear definition, and there doesn't need to be kind of clear definition of our
Yeah.
identities. And I think we all put on various identities when we go into different contexts. Right now, I'm in the filmmaker identity. When I'm teaching a class of children, I'm in a teacher identity, and I'm aware of how people see me in that context, and I might shape myself differently. I think we all do that, but in the film, we see, I don't know, a different side of that.
Yeah. Yeah, for me as spectator, it was as well, or it is as well, a very strong part of the film, this reflection on what means cultural belonging. And in which situation, yeah, as you have said already, in which situation do I belong to what semiotic system, I would say even.
Hmm.
With that, directly a question I had from the first minute I saw the film. You are dealing with five different languages. It's Hungarian, Ukrainian, Russian, Romanes, and did I forget something?
And Romanian.
Romanian, of course,
Yeah.
Romanian. How did this work? Do you speak all these languages?
Um, I do not speak Romanes fluently. I can understand, I can speak at a basic level. I've taken some classes. I've spent a lot of time with native speakers and they've tried their best to teach me. Hungarian, I also have a very basic level. So those are the two languages that I needed to, that presented some difficulties in doing the interviews because I wanted, from the start, I said I prefer to have people speak in the language with which they identify most. Um, so for the interviews in Hungarian and in Romanes, I had a friend come with me to help me do the actual questions and so on, and then later to help with transcribing and translating. But the rest, Ukrainian, Russian, Romanian, I learned those languages over the last 15 years.
Wow, wow, amazing. Uh, what I asked myself when I saw your film, do you somehow can see maybe a structure or a logical system in which situation protagonists use which language or which language not, and by what reason maybe? Because they are all multilingual,
Yeah.
or the most of them at least.
Well, I mean, I think the code switching that happens, that I don't know if we see that in the film per se, but that happens in sort of day-to-day life in this multi-ethnic, multilingual region is very much like what you would see in a big city like Berlin or something, um, where there are multiple languages at play. I mean, in general, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but in general, people try to speak the language that they think is going to be best understood in that context. So if they know that they're, and what we see in the film, or hopefully it's visible in the film, but what I've seen with these musicians is that they it's not only language, it's also the musical repertoire, it's also the way that they play music they will shape to the audience, because if they know they were hired by ethnic Hungarians, they're going to play ethnic Hungarian music, they're going to play in a more Hungarian style, they're going to speak Hungarian with their clients, you know. When if they go to Hungary to play a Romani festival, then they're going to be the Roma. They're going to embody that role in a way that they don't do at home usually, and they're going to try to perform a more Romani repertoire. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we all do in a way. We want to be understood, we want to be accepted, um, especially if it's if we're hired as musicians,
Yeah.
we want to make the client happy. So yeah, speaking a language they don't know is not going to be very effective.
Maybe a question, last question towards this topic. How is this like from official side or the authorities? I suppose that Ukrainian is somehow the official language by the authorities. How is in public the dealing with this multilingualism in this region?
Um, yeah, the official language in Ukraine is Ukrainian. Um, in much of the country of Ukraine, Russian is a second language for many people, first language also for many people. Transcarpathia or Zakarpattia is really a unique region, as I think is clear from the film, for historical reasons. It was part of Czechoslovakia, it was part of Hungary, it was a part of Romania, and no other part of Ukraine has, checks all those boxes in terms of historical um, attachments. So I think the authorities don't really know what to do with Transcarpathia in a way because it's much more common there than in other parts of Ukraine to speak two or three or four languages. And officially, to answer part of your question, officially in Ukraine since independence in '91, um, I think it's 10%. If 10% of the population speaks a particular language, then the government will provide a school in that language or provide some amount of schooling in that language. Um, so there are some, yeah, and as far as at the bureaucratic level, there is some assistance given to or support for ethnic minorities and minority languages. I don't know if it's probably more so than in the Soviet Union. That's my impression from musicians. But um, yeah, I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, no,
I mean,
perfectly. Shaun, I'm so sorry. Time is over already. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you
likewise.
very much for your very interesting insights to your film and the topic itself.
And thank you very much for having me. It's really
You're
nice to
very
talk with you.
welcome. You still can find Zakarpattia on our streaming platform until the end of the festival on Monday, November 23rd. And moreover, we have a kind of a voting tool because besides of the official jury award, we want to award as well with the voting from the audience one special film. This award ceremony will be on Monday. After having watched a film, you will get the opportunity to rate it. Please do so, because with that results we can, award this film. In a few minutes, our next film will be available on our streaming platform. It's The Deathless Woman, a documentary by British filmmaker and artist Ross Mortimer. As well with her will be the second Q&A of the night at 9:40 on YouTube and our Facebook channel. So stay tuned.